Madam Chair, you have a live mic.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call the Big Cypress Basin Board meeting for February 23rd, 2024 to order. If you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Ms. McLeod, if you could lead us, please. I pledge allegiance. Good morning. It's great to see everyone this morning. We really appreciate everyone joining us for the Big Cypress Basin meeting, the first one of 2024. For those joining us remotely, thank you for your continued interest and support. And as a reminder, today's proceedings are accessible via Zoom as well as Collier TV and the district's website. A couple of housekeeping items. Board members, as a reminder, please make sure your microphone is on and that you speak into the mic so online attendees can hear you. If you turn your head while you're speaking, like if you're facing another board member, just pull the mic with you so that your comments can be captured. And please try to get as close to the microphone as possible. To be recognized, please use the button next to you on the dais. For those here in person, if you would like to comment on an agenda item, please complete a speaker card in the lobby and bring it up front to Troy Miller, who's right over here. And if you're joining by Zoom, use the raise the hand feature and Troy will call on you. And if you're participating via phone, *9 raises your hand and *6 mutes and unmutes. That brings us to agenda revisions. Lisa Keeler, are there any agenda revisions this morning?
No, Madam Chair, there are not.
Okay, then we'll pull the board members for abstentions on anything on the agenda. So we'll go ahead and begin with Ms. McLeod. Any abstentions? Vice Chair Waters?
None.
I have none. Mr. Hill?
None.
Ms. Smith?
None.
Okay, and none were recorded. Consider approval of the minutes for the October 27th meeting. If there are no corrections or additions to the minutes, do I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Hill, a second by Ms. Smith. All in favor for approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. That brings us to the Basin Administrator's report. Lisa Keeler.
Good morning and welcome to our calendar 2024 board meeting. I want to just remind everybody about our Corkscrew Watershed Initiative. We heard from Akeen Owasana at your October board meeting about this project, and it's really important. It's one of the biggest studies I think the Basin has ever taken, and wanted just to keep you guys updated with how that is progressing. So over the last several months, Laura Lehman is our project manager, and she has been working with staff and the consultant on getting scope of work written and contracts done. And so we are ready to kick off the technical working group series of meetings. And that first one is going to be March 1st. And the technical group is comprised of the local experts who are working in the watershed or have projects in the watershed. And that really consists of Lee County, Village of Estero, City of Bonita Springs, Collier County, the Crew Trust, and of course, Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, along with your Basin team. Brad Jackson has got some projects that he'll be sharing with the technical working group as well for the projects that we have going on here in the Basin. So really just wanted you all to be aware, since it's been several months, that project is moving along, and we will continue to update you all as that is continuing. One last thing I have today. Oh, thank you. Is congratulations to our chair. She has been with the agency on the governing board and is our chair for 5 years. Her anniversary was Wednesday. And I had the honor of sharing that day with her out at Picayune Strand, which is, I think, one of her favorite places in the district to be. So just wanted to say congratulations to you. And in true Basin style, we have cupcakes to celebrate. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. That's so great. I mean, it was the perfect day in the Picayune Strand. The weather couldn't have been better. The last time I think I was out there, it was 100 degrees and we were really suffering from the heat, but Wednesday was just perfect.
It was. You can see from the photos, the clear blue skies. We had the most amazing day, out there with the Corps and some guests. So it was a
Yes,
wonderful day to celebrate an anniversary.
Thank you so much. And I was joined by Michelle Arquette Palermo, the Water Policy Director from the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, and also Eve Samples from the Friends of the Everglades. So they joined me on a trip that was hosted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And we were able to see just so much great progress going on out there at the Picayune Strand. I know some of you have had a chance to visit as well, but it's great to see that coming along, and hopefully we'll get that over the finish line. But thank you so much, Lisa. That's great.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the first general public comment period. There are two opportunities during the meeting for the public to speak. One at the beginning here, and then one towards the end of the meeting. So we'll start with anyone who's here in person, followed by those joining us remotely. Troy?
Madam Chair, I have no one registered here in the room. I have one hand raised on Zoom. Brad Cornell. Brad, you're being prompted to unmute yourself at this time. Oh, wait, Brad's hand went down. I'm taking it that means Brad doesn't want to speak. Nope, his hand's back up. Brad, you're unmuted, Brad. Go ahead.
Thanks, Troy. Madam Chair, thanks. This is Brad Cornell with Audubon, Florida, and Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. And if I may add my congratulations on your 5-year anniversary, and thanks for all the years of advocacy and support for the Big Cypress watershed work that you do with your colleagues. So congratulations. I wanted to just share some support that we have and positive anticipation that the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary staff have as we are about to launch the Corkscrew Watershed Initiative, as Lisa just shared with you. This is one of the most important projects that we have seen in this watershed, and we're very thankful and grateful for the Basin's support for a number of years, since our science staff have identified the hydrologic impacts at Corkscrew, and we're appreciative of that effort and the 3-year study that this is the start of, the technical working group that launches next week, and the 3-year study that's looking for describing what the restoration strategies are going to be that are going to address the hydrologic impacts that we have seen at Corkscrew. So very, very important, obviously, to us, but I think also for the CREW project and for the wider Big Cypress Basin. So thank you for that support, and we look forward to our continued collaboration.
Thank you, Brad.
That was the only hand raised on Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Troy. And we'll move on to the Big Cypress Basin Mowing Reduction Pilot Study with Sean Murphy.
Thank you. So, good morning. Thank you. My name is Sean Murphy, and I am a water manager at the South Florida Water Management District at the Big Cypress Basin. And today I'm here to present the Big Cypress Basin's Mowing Reduction Pilot Study. So after looking at alternative ground covers in the basin's most recent study in collaboration with Naples Botanical Garden, it was determined that none of the alternative species exhibited the durability observed in the current ground cover Bahia grass. Following the conclusion of the study, the board asked district staff to investigate next steps. with the continued goal of improving mowing operations and reducing operational costs within the basin. So the basin is proposing to conduct a year-long study at the Cypress 1 water control structure while it is currently not connected to our canal system. This study will partition the structure into 3 sections to examine the impacts of implementing 3 different maintenance approaches. Option 1 over there on the southeast bank is going to be a no mow and spray as necessary. Option 2 on the southwest bank is going to be a no mow and no spray. And option 3 is going to be mown 4 times per year to a height of 6 to 8 inches and will also be sprayed as needed. So, and option 3 will serve as the control of the study since it's going to be maintained per typical of our rural areas along the canal. Prior to the study, the basin with the collaboration of the field station and land management team will install signage, conduct a pre-study site survey, which will also document existing conditions, and also do site preparation, which will include weed removal and a mow so that we can have a baseline prior to the start of the study. The field station, land management, and district project manager will all meet on site monthly for the duration of the study, and we will monitor and collect the following data. So we'll collect the average plant height, take photos, record the percent coverage, and keep a running list of invasive species in the study area. And we'll also have a detailed record of costs associated with mowing and spraying. Additionally, there will be monthly reports that will summarize the conditions and the data collected at each monthly site visit. And at the end of the study, a final report with the help of the field station and land management team will be created and detail the results of the findings. And a final presentation will be given at the August 2025 board meeting. So in summary, as part of our ongoing efforts to improve canal bank maintenance operations within the basin and the board's concurrence with the study, we've reviewed various strategies and identified an opportunity at the Cypress 1 water control structure. This study will evaluate the effectiveness and of the 3 maintenance options and gather valuable data so we can better inform future decisions regarding canal bank maintenance with the overall goal of reducing operational costs. So with that, Madam Chair, any of the board members have any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Great. Questions from the board? Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah.
When you're spraying, what are you spraying and what do you spray with?
So this will be sprayed application by backpack. So they'll be going along and they'll be spraying, spot spraying treatment. As far as the chemical, I think it is a 2,4-D is what we use.
Okay.
So, and that's pretty standard throughout the field stations and land management.
Okay, other questions from the board? I had a question for you, Sean. How did we get to the point where we wanted to test using just Bahia?
Yeah, so we got there by concluding our study. And from that, we had our previous meeting, but we got there by the Bahia grass was the most resilient from our previous study. So we did that study of testing the alternative species, those 3 other species, and also just working with land management team of going over their previous studies and what species they've used as well. But the major issue was just with the weeds and the invasives, and Bahia had the most robust, root structure. Not only for just our main priority is flood protection, but also just to outcompete the invasives and other weeds. So it was the most resilient. That's how we came to that.
Yeah, I see some advantages to if this works and we continue to study it and, and to test to see if we can come up with a solution. Bahia at a higher height would also provide some habitat along the edges of the canal, which would maybe provide some good benefits there too.
I look forward to this study.
Okay. Any other questions?
It seems like there's still a missing void. I was disappointed the study didn't have any better outcomes, but it is what it is. I just wonder what other avenues is it worth talking to people at Florida Gulf Coast Water School, if there's some geniuses there, maybe some young people that have some ideas. But it seems like between the cost of mowing and the maintenance, it seems like there's a solution out there that just hasn't come around. And I have no clue what it is, but there's hopefully people smarter than me to consider options.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this board is being a leader on, is looking for these alternatives. Because if we could find something, Mr. Hill, that would work in the basin, it might have greater applications for the district.
Sure.
And there's thousands of miles of canals, I think, out there.
Has there been any inquiries to somebody at FGCU?
We have had discussions with our land management team, and they have consulted with IFAS on some of the concerns that we've had, and they've sort of given us back information, just sort of giving us more, I guess, to say that we're focusing more on the maintenance approaches versus the exhaustive list of the other species. And that's where we sort of run into the issue is, and part of this study is going to show, what the degradation is of you just letting it go feral. So
I was wondering about that.
it's not just what species that we can put on the bank, it's, managing the invasives and the weeds. So we're going to get,
Okay.
an opportunity to see that in the study.
One of the things, Andy, that I know Chad Washburn and our land management folks, Chad Washburn from the Naples Botanical Garden and our land management folks from the district discussed was when we tested with the native ground covers that were selected, the technique that was used to plant them was to put plugs in the ground.
Okay.
And plugs by their very nature leave space in between, right? So it gives an opportunity for, if there are invasives to recruit, they're going to come in between those plugs.
Right.
Where, as you know, sod is produced in like a carpet, and there's less space in between those grass clumps, right? As there were if they would be plugged. So that's one of the limiting things is that many companies, well, we haven't found one company that produces carpet-like portions of native grasses, as opposed to us having to plug it. Okay, so that's one of the other things that's a part of this. And it's basically the maintenance keeps down all those invasives and all those woody exotics from gaining ground. So that's a thought I'd share with you to give some thought to.
Okay.
So, because it's better to have a carpet laid down and cover everything, right? As opposed to plugging things. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you all.
Is there any public comment? I'm sorry.
We have no people here in the room and no hands raised on Zoom at this time.
Okay, great. All right, then we'll move to Capital Improvement Program, the 5-year update with Mr. Brad Jackson.
Hey, good morning, Madam Chair, board members. My name is Brad Jackson, the Basin engineer. I'm happy to be here today to talk about the capital improvement program, and we've got a 5-year set of projects here that I'm going to introduce some new ones, go over some older ones that we've been working on, and kind of give a status of where we are with everything. But it's an aggressive program. I'm really happy to show and share all the work that we have ongoing and what's coming up in the future. So I'm just going to kind of walk through the projects, give some overview of why the projects are important, a kind of a quick status of it and everything. So really we'll start off here. This is our water monitoring upgrade project. This is a long-term project we've been working on for 25 or so years. So if you rewound the clock 25 years and you want to know what was going on in this system as far as water levels, rainfall, etc., you would get something on the top left picture. There's a manual staff gauge reading that someone has to go out and read it and try and eyeball off exactly what the water levels are at that point in time. That's not real conducive. It's labor intensive if you're driving all over the county to try and do that. So at that point in time, we started trying to think about how to modernize the system so we could get more of that information back real time. So we've been working on this for, like I said, 25 years. We've added over 80 monitoring stations from, monitoring critical wetlands, rain stations, water control structures all over the place. And it's really helped us manage the system better and be able to respond to when the rainfall happens. So if you think what happened before, someone would drive out, look at it, come back and report at the end of the day. Well, it's rained 3 more inches. So the canal level's changed. Everything's different. It doesn't do you any good at that point, and the data is stale. So we've been working, and on the bottom left of the slide, there's a picture of a new structure or a new station. And that gives us real-time information to the 15 minutes or less of rainfall that happens, water level, and other monitoring parameters if we need to, flow, et cetera. So we've put all of these in all over the basin, and I'm happy to report that we've got one left remaining. That's a standalone thing at one structure at I-75 number 3, and we have to do the downstream portion of that. And one of the neat parts of this, I can see this from my office is managing the system, but we also put this out on the website for everyone to look at. So if anyone from the public wants to look and see what a water level is or what the trends are, or how much rains happen, it's all on our website. And what I put up on the screen now is just a snippet of what that website looks like from our homepage. And you can see all of the values are populated with the exception of the one on I-75 number 3. So that's the one we're lacking. When it's all said and done, we'll have that one completed. We'll have a full picture of that particular branch of the system. So we're in design right now of that last structure, and then we'll be working on construction for next year. We've got a $400,000 budget for that for next year, and that should wrap up everything we know so far that we need. There might be some other things that come up from maybe the CWI project or something like that. But as far as our flood control system, we have all of the bases covered that need a standalone site. So it makes my job a heck of a lot easier to monitor the system and be able to respond correctly to what's going on in the world. So continuing along the same lines as communications and real-time monitoring, all of this infrastructure we've built to monitor real-time water levels, rainfall, the tower that we're proposing to build in Lake, just northeast of Lake Trafford, is critical backbone to that system. So you've seen this one before. It was discussed previously. We've been working on design of this for a while. And just to give a little background real quickly, this eliminates our resilience from the cellular network. Yesterday, there was a widespread cellular outage, and so it didn't affect us, fortunately. We could still see everything, but that dependency could affect us in the future. And it does routinely go down during storms, not giving us the best ability to see everything. So when we finish this tower, we'll have that connectivity through hurricanes, through rainstorms. That connection system is basically always up. There's a very, very small downtime. And even when it is, we still have a backup path that all that information can still get back to the water managers, control room, and to the public. So it's very important for us to get this last bit of the communication system in. So I'm pleased to report that the final design is rounding the corner. We finished our 90% plans this last winter. And then we've got some remaining milestones I've got here on the slide, but basically we'll be going out for bids this summer, and construction anticipated to come back and start this fall and take a couple years. We do have a current cost estimate of about $8.5 million. So it is a large project for the basin, but it's so critical. We've got to operate our 34 water control structures and provide that flood protection for everyone that lives here. So I'm so glad to see this one moving along personally. Along the lines of transition from communications and kind of get into more flood control improvements, we've got a program to improve the flood conveyance for certain key areas of our canal system. We can't go widen all the canals everywhere we want to or need to, but we do have some systematic places where we can widen them and improve how much water can move through the system. So the first one I'm going to highlight here is it's the Cypress Canal and Curry Canal, and that's on the bottom right picture. You can kind of see how the 3 canals kind of have an intersection there, and that intersection is very small in width. So imagine trying to get a lot of water through Curry Canal or through Cypress through that small choke point. So that's the goal, is to remove that choke point. And I'm happy to report we just started construction on this one last week and a half ago. And on the top left, there's a current picture of construction, and the canal is already wider than it was. They're making significant progress already. And this summer we'll be able to utilize that canal to move a little bit extra water through there, which is fantastic. Then to kind of back up and look at what other areas are we highlighting in the system that would need to do flood control improvements. When we finished our floodplain level of service study, it kind of identified a few choke points that we knew we needed to take care of. One of them's in the I-75, just south of the Vanderbilt Beach Road. Another one's the Green Canal, just north of Golden Gate City. Those areas have had some deposition, some shoaling. There's a picture of an example of what kind of shoaling looks like in the middle of the screen there. But that eats away at your cross section. Then that's where we want the water to go through during a storm event. So the goal of those projects is basically to remove that excess material and get it out of there so the water can move freely. There's also additional shoaling that we've identified. It's about 1.5 miles long, so considerable amount downstream of the FAC Union number 5 structure. It's all the way on the east side of our system. And there's definitely quite a bit of sedimentation we need to remove there. So with those, we've got funding allocated in 2024, 5 and 6 to try to tackle these areas, get that material out of there so we can continue to improve the flood conveyance of the system. Next here, we've got the Corkscrew Canal Headwater. So this one pings off of what Lisa just talked about with the CWI project that's just getting kicked off. So to back up a little bit, we've been working on a hydrologic model that kind of simulates what's going on in the region for the last few years. That tool is complete this spring, and then that modeling tool that kind of tells you how the wetlands work, where the water flows, and how the system responds to real rainfall. It lets us use that tool, then we can kind of insert projects in that tool, and it'll simulate what may happen as an effect. So if we put a levee up somewhere, it has this effect. If we put a new water control structure, it has this effect. So you've got your timeline laid out here on the screen. That this is kind of a repeat, but just to rehash the 3-year schedule for that CWI project. But really the main takeaway here is the capital program support. We're already planning that there's going to be some low-hanging fruit that comes out of the CWI project, some easy to implement projects that everyone can agree, yeah, that's a good thing to do, let's go do it. So we've got money programmed in FY 25 and 26 to start whatever those early drop-off projects might be. We don't know what they are yet, but we have funding identified for it, and we can change that funding as those projects get more flushed out. But we would know it's important to get these things completed and get those projects identified and get them started quickly. The last bit of the support program for the Corkscrew Canal Headwater is our Cork 3 structure. Over here in the blue area is our Cork 3 structure. It's one of our further northern structures, and it's an interface between Bird Rookery and our canal system. So we know something needs to be done with that structure to improve the interface between the swamp, the natural areas, and the canal. We don't know what that exactly is going to look like, but we have money programmed in the further out years as the study finishes to help inform us, what are we going to build there? What features, what type of structure? And so we have some money programmed in for that for right now, $6 million, but that will change as that project gets more fleshed out in the future. So I'm happy to see that one get some legs and get moving, because that structure definitely needs some attention in the future. So I'll move back to away from restoration and into a little bit more flood control. This is the I-75 canal. It runs north-south, basically from Golden Gate Parkway all the way up to Immokalee Road. And here we have a structure that is on Pine Ridge Road. We call that I-75 number 2, a very clever name that we use. And then I-75 number 1 is further south, just south of Golden Gate Parkway. So the number 2 structure, it's an older structure. It requires manual operation. You know, we're trying to get away from all the manual operations that we have. And this structure, when we replace it, will help us improve the flood control of the system. And it'll really help us hold more groundwater in the system when it's hydrologically appropriate. We don't want to do that in July necessarily. But in the dry season, when we want to hold on to that extra water, it will allow us to do that and be able to respond correctly. And then the I-75-1 structure, it's basically redundant at this point. The downstream structure we built, GG2, kind of takes the place of I-75-1. So it didn't really make sense to keep maintaining an old structure that serves no purpose. It's just in the way. So the design for both of these are underway. We packaged them together to get some savings there. And then the I-75-1 structure will be completely removed. And then the I-75-2 structure will be moved south a block or two, just on the south side of Pine Ridge Road, and start construction in FY25. So we got a little bit more than, about a year of design left to finish that up, but it's well on its way and looking good. So. So more on flood control improvements. We're going to shift focus here to the eastern side again. This is FACA Union. So if you would remember where the canal flood control improvements were, this starts where that one stops. So at FU5, which is the bottom star here on the right picture, and this study is going to have us look at these 3 control structures at the very top of that system. They're basically the original system that was built when the canals were built, some of them. FU5 has its challenges. You can see on the bottom left, it gets clogged up with debris just on a routine basis. I mean, the field station does a great job removing debris and keeping all of it out of there, but when it can break loose and get clogged up in those small gates no matter what we do. So this project isn't necessarily construction right away. It's a study. We want to figure out, how do we want to rebuild these? Where do we want to rebuild them? And then we can program exactly how we want to do that and when we want to do it. But first we have to have a plan. And so this plan will basically tell us how and when to do the structure improvements. Our belief is that FU number 6 is redundant. We need to complete the study to support that, but we think it's redundant, and we hopefully can remove it and have one less structure to maintain, because it serves basically no purpose if we upgrade the downstream structure. So we've got the study starting this year in 2024. It'll take a couple years to finish all that up. And then hopefully we can start construction, depending on how that design finishes up, for in 26 and 8 for those southern 2 structures, and move those along, which will be a great benefit. So we're working all over the basin. We've got a lot of projects going, touched every corner of the basin, and this one's no different. This is the first time that I've introduced this project to the board, and this is the Henderson Creek improvements. So to orient everyone, HC number 1 is down here at US 41 and basically 951 or Collier Boulevard. That's our main coastal outfall structure. Just downstream of that is Rookery Bay. And just upstream of this, we provide flood control for all the residents, and there's also public water supply. So when we completed our flood protection level of service study, this structure looks susceptible to storm surge events. It's susceptible to sea level rise. Its level of service will decrease over time if we don't do something to improve the structure. It's a difficult to operate structure. It's got manual gates. Some of them are automated. So it's a challenge to deal with in a storm event. So really the main goals of this project is to improve the flood performance of the system. And that may not mean anything with those words, but in essence, we want to lower the water levels during a storm event inside the canal. And if you can do that, then the water can more easily get to the canal and reduce the adjacent flooding in the community. Another thing we want to do is reduce the storm surge effects. As we've seen in not so recent history, or in recent history, we have susceptible events from storm surge. So this one, we were fortunate the way Ian came through. This one didn't get impacted as much as others, but that was just chance the way that one came on. So we want to redesign these in a way that we can account for some of that and reduce it. We'll never be able to eliminate it completely. And that's clear to understand the distinction there, but we want to be able to reduce the effects and provide a higher level of service than the current structure does. And by doing that, we also protect the upstream water supply, which is just upstream of that. The Marco Island the public water supply is right there, right next to the canal. So in addition to those other items, the other conflicting thing that the system really, there's a need to do is reduce the amount of freshwater discharges out of the system. So the Rookery Bay estuaries downstream, they don't necessarily need more fresh water at times. And while we still have to provide flood control, we can probably do better to fine tune that balance a little bit to release the water when we can or when we have to, rather than we have no choice. It's coming because of the limitations of the aging and old structure. So we've done that with GG1 and COCO1. We've done improvements to limit that discharge, and we hope to do the same thing here at Henderson Creek #1. Just real quick, we believe there's a possible intermediary structure, a new structure, to help hold back even more fresh water during the dry season. That's HC1, which I've got marked here. We don't know exactly where it's going to go, so we just kind of placed a star right now where we think it might go, but that's just really a dry season structure that we would open and close to stop the releases when it's dry season and to hold the water, to recharge the aquifer, to maintain the adjacent wetlands and everything. So this is a long-term project. We've got the beginning of this project still out in the future, but it's the first time it creeps up in our 5-year forecast for you guys. So right now we're scheduled to start the H&H assessment, the hydrology and study part of it in 2026. And then it follows subsequent years after that through design and construction. So we will definitely keep the board apprised of how this progresses moving forward and everything. So this one will be a good one to kick off. So back up east to the system, this is Golden Gate #5. So to orient everyone, this is between Everglades and Immokalee, just north of Randall Boulevard is where the current structure is. That area, as long with all the other Golden Gate Estate areas, is there's a lot of development. Drive down any street, there's homes being built. And so the main goal of what we're trying to do here right now is identify the spot where we want to put the new structure. We want to secure the right of way for it so we can get that, so no one puts a home there that then we have to work with and deal with in the future. So that's the main goal in 2025, is to purchase the right of way for where the new structure is going to go. Fortunately, we've already kind of identified, we did the modeling in-house to tell us where we want the structure to go. And what you see on the left, I'll explain that a little bit. That's really the dry season benefit of the structure. So the current structure today it's set too low and the groundwater over drains. We can do better than that and hold that fresh water in the system. As I've mentioned during my water conditions report and other times, the more we can hold that in, the more fresh water is available and the less that goes out to tide that is not needed. So the different colors on the maps, that the new structure's just to the south end here of where the red stops. But the red, that shows a 1.5 foot difference of how much more groundwater is going to be in the ground when we put the new structure in. And so this simulates and shows what the effect of the new structure is going to be. And it's widespread. It reaches all the way out to Immokalee Road, all the way out further out into the estates and up to GG 6 and 7, almost up to the very top of the structures. So it's got a very big impact on how much groundwater we can save. And that's every drop that doesn't go out to Naples Bay or go downstream where it is not needed. So I've got 2 more projects to list off and talk about. They've got a very strong and aggressive project schedule here for all of these, but these 2 are the Gordon River structure and the Palm River structure. So I'll talk about these kind of together. These are 2 new, they're not new, but it was a condition of the South Florida Water Management District and the Collier County Cooperative Agreement that was just completed and signed last year. That agreement shows that we will design and rebuild these structures, these critical outfall structures. So these are saltwater barriers that provide flood control. So we're going to be starting design of these 2 structures. You can see this Gordon River #1 is just south of Golden Gate Parkway and west of Airport Road, just south of Freedom Park, basically, if you're familiar with that. And this is what the old structure looks like. There's no operations on it. There's no resiliency to it. The water just comes up and it goes out, and the water can also come in from the tide side. So just like with the Henderson Creek one I talked about and other coastal projects, we're going to put something in that's more robust, that will prevent that saltwater backflow from happening while maintaining the current flood protection level of service. With it being a coastal structure, it's got a little bit more scrutiny that we have to look at, make sure that we're looking at storm surge, possible sea level rise. And we want to make sure that we're including remote operations, backup power, and put all the bells and whistles on these, because if these go down during a storm, they're going to be the most affected from a hurricane event. So these are important to get right. So this one is scheduled to start design in 24 and 26. It'll has a 2-year window. And then I'll just flip quickly over to the next one because we're running these in parallel together as one package. And this is the Palm River. So orient everyone here. This is north of the other one, but it's by Immokalee Road and Airport Road, and it's on this tributary to the Cocohatchee River. And these really are very close to our control structures that we already manage. So it makes sense for us to go ahead and take these on. All the same things that I just said about Gordon River will apply here. All the same types of considerations for as far as remote operations and backup. It's got a similar schedule, so these will be running together, and look forward to getting these kicked off in the next year on design and moving that forward. I will close here. This is just a slide summary of your 5-year capital improvement plan and forecast for the program I just went over. So each line that's on there, you can look at the budget that we currently have for 2024, 2025. And then we also have a planning year, 26, 7, 8, 9. So those numbers will change as the projects come more into focus, and costs unfortunately probably will not go down. But we are planning ahead, and these numbers do get tweaked and adjusted as the designs move forward. But there you can see from the totals on here and the number of projects, it's not a small amount of projects at all that we're working on. And there's a lot of things up in the air and all in different stages of design and construction and study. So these projects will be with us for a while moving forward. And I will close there. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Brad. Questions for Brad Jackson?
I have one. This might be a silly question, but what's the lifetime of a weir?
So a new one we designed for a 50-year life, kind of design horizon. Some of them, like that's why we're starting to replace some of them. They're getting closer to that end or past it. So that's our design life expectancy.
So that's kind of a key or a target. The other one is the HC1 project. Do you work with Marco? Do you bring them in? Are they knowledgeable about the work that you're doing? I'm assuming they are, but
So we haven't started that project yet, but once it happens, yes, we'll bring stakeholders in, Marco Island Utilities, Rookery Bay. I mean, just with all of these projects, we have a set of stakeholders that we work with to make sure that they're informed and we're not making adverse changes that will affect their current operations, because they have a current permit to withdraw X amount of water and different levels. So we don't want to affect that negatively. And if we can improve it, even better, but we definitely want to work with them. Mm-hmm.
Final question. Besides this, an open forum for the public to listen in, et cetera, do you do anything out in the field? What you're doing is amazing. I get questions about flood control all the time. Different, city, county, the basin, the district. Any other way to get the word out? I know I'm working on my end to do a forum or something that would inform at least the 90,000 real estate brokers in the city or the state or that county. But anything else?
I mean, so historically, we've gone and visited with like HOA groups. We've visited with the county commissioners at times when they have their public meetings and town halls. So we've been invited to those in the past and provide some information, some background information on how the system works, what our challenges are. And one of the questions that always comes up is, why is there water in my swales? Why is there water in my yard? And we try to provide some context to that, to the folks who have maybe just moved here that aren't as familiar with that feature that's common here. So those are kind of the ones that we've done historically, but we're always looking for other opportunities to do public outreach.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Waters.
Thanks, Brad. 2 questions. One is on the I-75 structure. At some point, when Akeem looked at some things, we talked about where the 75 canal tied into Golden Gate, straightening that out. And I don't remember whether when he looked at it, if there was any benefit. And so one, do you remember if there was a benefit? And if there is, would we do that when we pull out that old structure and just get out of that area in one fell swoop?
Sure. So I'm familiar with what you're talking about. We spent maybe not this last year, but the year before, quite a bit of time modeling that. And besides getting into all the nuts and bolts of the modeling, the takeaway was it didn't provide enough benefit to do it. So limiting capacity is really the Golden Gate Canal, not the I-75 canal.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
You bet.
And then the other one is just, when we see your water conditions report, you can see the benefit of being able to remotely operate all of these. And, I may get the number wrong, 77% of rainfall, but a lot of these are above the, way above the typical stage historically. So if we get through everything you just went through, what percentage of our operable structures are you then able to remotely operate? Are we at 100% at that point? Are we at 90? How much further do we have to get till all of them can do this?
It's a good question. We're probably, once we finish this whole program, we're probably bouncing around the 90% range, would be just off the top of my head. There's a few newer ones that we built that don't get operated a whole lot, so it didn't make a ton of sense to put, remote operations on those. But really, there'd just be a handful left, I think, 2 or 3.
All right, thanks.
Good question. Michelle?
Yeah, this is off topic of the capital improvement projects, but water related. So there's a lot of media clips right now about concerning the district about the releases being done at Lake Okeechobee. And I just wanted Brad to answer this question for the benefit of the public and for their knowledge. How do those releases affect us down here in Collier County?
So I can talk on that a little bit now, and I'll touch on it more in the water conditions report. But generally speaking, those are 2 separate watersheds. So the water that comes out of that area is not directly affected or connected to us at all. Our operations are independent, and everything, the Caloosahatchee are separate from us. There's no real connection there at all.
Okay, good, because there's a lot of confusion out there in the public as to how that affects us, and I wanted you to address that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other board questions for Brad? Okay, thank you so much for your excellent presentation, Brad. Appreciate it. Is there any public comment, Troy?
I have no registered speakers here in the room and no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, great. That brings us to board comment. And we'll go ahead and begin with Ms. Smith.
I really don't have any comment except for I did visit the FACA and Merit plants, and it was extremely valuable time with Lisa, and Andrew was the driver, and and the staff was amazing, and they went through everything in detail. It was very educational for me, being a new member. Also, I will be attending the Climate Summit next week in Punta Gorda on behalf of the Basin. So I will report back if anybody else is not attending, or even if you are attending, with notes and any things, materials that I can take away. I think that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Hill?
A couple of things are on my mind. First, with the Corkscrew Initiative, I was wondering what studies will be done and outside of the scientific work, which I think is already articulated, but to the economic implications and the qualitative implications of the community. Because there's some people that don't believe this is worthwhile spending any taxpayer dollars on such initiatives. And that's my concern, is that there's a lot of benefits that are outside of just moving water into that area that are not that I don't think have been articulated. And then a separate thing that I'm as I continue to monitor the high level of water that is stuck on the east side of 41 through the Everglades area, the Picayune Strand, and the area that the district recently acquired at the corner of 41 and 29. There's a real beginning of a lake there. So that's an area that I'm looking for, how that water can be moved south and into the estuary, which is desperately needed as the salt water content is just too high, I believe. So those are things that I'm wondering about.
Sounds good. Ms. McLeod?
Oh.
You'll come next.
Okay, so I do have something
Great.
that I wanted to share with everybody. So at this year's annual Everglades Coalition Conference in January, I had the fortunate opportunity of being present as our chair, Charlotte Roman, was awarded a prestigious public service award by the Conservancy of Southwest Florida. The Public Service Award is given to an outstanding elected, appointed, or agency professional who has gone above and beyond the call of duty to advance Everglades restoration. Personally, I had no idea how amazing our chair's background was until I heard her accomplishments shared at the conference by Michelle Arquette Palermo, Water Policy Manager at the Conservancy. To name just a few of Charlotte's accomplishments, Charlotte served in the Army for 26 years and retired as a full colonel. Charlotte's amazing career also included command of an airborne signal battalion at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, as well as serving as an inspector general and commander of U.S. Garrison Fort Gordon, Georgia. After all of this, she retired and moved to Marco Island, and that's when she entered our lives and our community, making incredible contributions, leading conservation initiatives while serving on the Marco City Council and other county, city, and nonprofit boards. And as we all know what happened in 2019 when Governor Ron DeSantis completely restructured the South Florida Water Management District Board and appointed Ms. Roman as a valuable member to the board, which then included being chair of our Big Cypress Basin Board. And ever since then, she has spent countless hours traveling across the South Florida Water Management District, 16 different counties, working on important Everglades restoration and other water quality efforts. The Public Service Award Charlotte received at the Everglades Coalition Conference is not her first award. She has also received awards in recognition of her conservation contributions, to name a few: the Collier County Audubon Society Fellowship Award and the Laverne Norris Gaynor Environmental Champion Award by the Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Board. And I ask you now to please join me in congratulating our chair in recently being acknowledged for her outstanding public service acknowledgement or accomplishments.
I'm speechless. I really am. I really appreciate that, and the fact that you were at the conference with the Everglades Coalition when I received that award, and Lisa as well, and so many others. The Everglades Coalition is made up of about 60 different organizations, and to be recognized by such an important group that works for restoration of the greater Everglades ecosystem, and to have so many people who are a part of any success that I've been able to have, and including this board and the Basin team. I mean, I'm so proud of all we've been able to accomplish together. And I know it doesn't seem like much, but what Mr. Brad Jackson just briefed as far as that 5-year capital plan, I mean, we should be cheering for that. That is just amazing. And it's because of all of you. And so I'm humbled, and thank you, Michelle, and thank you for being there. That really is appreciated. Thank you. Vice Chair Waters?
No, other than to congratulate you for that. Nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one thing. I had the opportunity to go out on Naples Bay, and Lisa Keeler and I joined, and Sean Murphy, and we joined Katie Lackaman, who is the environmental specialist for the city of Naples. And we went out on Naples Bay to take a look at how we're coming along with the regional partnership project to restore oyster reefs in the bay. And there are 6 new restoration areas going in, and work was underway, and it was really some great work that's happening. This area that we looked at was the new area, I should say, was near Haldeman Creek. The previous area was more in the actual bay itself. And we went ahead and looked at the older restoration site that we had done. And it was amazing to see some of the shorebirds and that were using the wave attenuation balls for foraging. And it was great to see how those balls broke up the wave action, because we were there in a windy day, a very windy day. And behind those wave attenuation devices, the oyster reefs were in a calm area and they were very mature and they were doing their jobs there. So I want to thank Katie Lackaman for that visit and all the great work, and the city of Naples for their partnership with the Big Cypress Basin Board. So if any of you have time and want to go see that, certainly I'm sure that can be arranged, and she'd be happy to show that to you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I was on the Naples City Council when they first
Oh,
put all of that together. Yeah,
right.
so it was like 2017-ish or 2016 that they did that. And it's amazing just what has happened in such a short period of time and how it's growing into other area. They're putting these things in other areas. So I'm excited to see that.
So the 2017 timeframe was for the first phase of the project. Wonderful. That is just so great because it's really doing its job. I mean, it also gave me some thoughts about how we could maybe use some of those same techniques elsewhere in the district to attenuate the wave action and maybe get some submerged aquatic vegetation growing in some of the bays of Lake Okeechobee. So I've been having those discussions with FWC, and it was great to go out there and see these windy, terrible conditions in Naples Bay. And then right behind that, those wave attenuation balls, it was calm and the oyster reefs were flourishing. And so was the habitat. So great. That's just terrific. Well, phase 2 is underway. And so you might want to go ahead and check that out. All right, nothing else. We'll go on to technical reports with the field station activity report. Andrew?
Good morning. I'm Andrew Wolf, the superintendent of the Big Cypress Basin Field Station. And I'm here to give a field operations report with our maintenance activities and our 3-month look ahead. We have a SIP program, which means structure inspection program, that every 5 years, each structure is evaluated by engineers and a detailed report comes out. The following year, we get the report and then we repair anything that needs to be fixed from this report. And they did half our structures last year inspection. This year, they're doing the other half. And we're in the first half of the repairs this year. So we have until October to achieve 100% on these repairs. So that's taken up a lot of our time. And what's good to know is it's not a lot of large repairs. It's a lot of minor, like paint chipping, things like that, very minor things. So, but it's good to have them inspected both above water and underwater every 5 years. At Coco 2, we're doing a major gate overhaul. And in the video to the right, you see them installing stop logs. And what an overhaul takes is you have to dry out the bay of the structure. And here they're putting in stop logs. And if you see the little yellow helmet there to the right lower, that's a diver in the water. Once they get it set, he'll go in and see if it's set correctly. And then when they're all in, he'll go in and plug up any holes, any leaks. So we can pump down the water in the bay and then pull the gate out to get refurbished. Picture on the left is the Miami Field Station crane truck, which came over and helped us install the stop logs and pull the gate. The center is the stop logs downstream. That's what it looks like when they're all in place. And the diver's just checking for leaks and plugging any leaks that we have. And on the right is Francisco. He's going down to hook up the gate to have it pulled out. But we have to basically strip the structure of everything mechanical. There on the left, you see them taking off the gearbox. The stem will come out next, and then the top deck. And on the right is the crane truck pulling the gate out of the structure. The gate will be brought back to our field station. It'll be dismantled. It'll be pressure cleaned and loaded and taken to West Palm Beach Field Station. West Palm Beach has a machine shop and a paint shop. And what they'll do, they'll blast the gate, take off all the rust and any paint and check for any damage and repair the damage in their machine shop. And then repaint it, prime it and repaint it. Some of the damaged areas, you'll see the before and afters. On the left is some rust on the side of the gate and with steel wheels that guide the gate in the structure. And on the right, you'll see it the repaired rust and they'll machine stainless steel wheels now, so they won't rust ever again. So next time it's pulled out in 10 years, they should be fine. And just another area that was severely rusted, they blast it. If it's is not that bad a shape, they won't do anything with the rust. On the right, they didn't put a patch or anything on it because the structurally is still fine. But if it's bad enough, they'll weld in the new pieces to it. And we're just got that gate back and we'll be installing it. So I'll update you at the next meeting on the install. And then we're going to go to gate 2 and do the same thing with that gate, the Cocoa 2. Vegetation management, it's always an issue. Here we have our truck soar boat and our long reach on Henderson Creek, removing the heavy vegetation. And you see in the background that there's a lot of bridges going in there. So it's very difficult to maintain the canal while these bridges are being constructed. So the submerged vegetation kind of got out of hand in this little area here. So what we've tried something new at the basin is doing a aquatic submerged treatment with a drone. It's the drone on the right. We did 12.5 surface acres from Verona Walk up to the old Cracklin' Jack's restaurant. And here on the video on the right is the drone actually spraying the canal. 1 5-gallon tank of water will do 1 acre. And in that 5 gallons of water is only 12 ounces of chemical. So it's a very low rate of chemical. And we're using Percellacor, which is a non-glyphosate chemical. But what they did in 6 hours on Henderson Creek with a drone would have taken a week and a half in a boat. Because here, as you can see, the drone can just hop over the bridges and go to the next section, where a boat would have to be pulled out and moved to the next boat ramp and put back in. So in 6 hours, they completed the 12.5 acres with a cost saving of probably around $1,800 to $2,000 over putting it on with a boat. The public is actually very interested. Had a lot of people stopping and taking pictures, and it's pretty interesting technology. And Big Cypress Basin's one of the first ones to use this treatment, use drone treatment. A 3-month look ahead. We continue with structure inspection program repairs. We'll be installing gate number 1 at Cocoa and removing gate 2 for overhaul. And we are taking delivery of the new Ford electric truck. It's called Lightning. Sometime in March. It has been built, but they haven't given us a delivery date yet. So sometime in March. So at the April meeting, I'll give you a little update on it and see how it's working out. As far as our comprehensive Everglades restoration projects, at Merritt Pump Station, they dismantled pump number 2 to replace the pump shaft. On the left-hand picture, they're drying out the pump bay. And on the right, you'll see them loading the prop and the diffuser to take up to a repair place in Tampa, just to balance the prop and make sure everything's good with the diffuser, do any welding that needs to be done. And we should be getting that back probably in March. So it'll be back in service by wet season. At the manatee mitigation area, we've taken under a tree removal program around the edges of each of the ponds. We found that the ponds are filling in with silt, and that the first step to correcting that is taking the trees off, and then we're going to eventually down the road dig out the ponds to their right depth, and then armor the bank with rock where the trees are. So you see the before and after on the right and left side there. It'll make it a lot easier to get in and do any corrective work to the manatee mitigation area. And the pump station maintenance, we've completed monthly preventative maintenance. We have an LED light program, which we've completed in Miller Pump Station now. There's very few regular incandescent lights left or fluorescent lights. And we should be done changing them all out within the next probably 6 months. We completed yearly oil and fuel samples, and we continue training 3 new employees on pump operations. And it seemed like every time I have a hazard for a pump station picture, last time it was a rattlesnake.
Yep.
This time an alligator got underneath the fence and fell into the fuel farm barrier. It's like a 3-foot wall around the fuel tanks that contain any fuel that leaks, if there's ever an accident. So they have to go down every day and check to see if there's water in the fuel farm. So it's just another hazard at the pump station. They had to call FWC and have the gator removed, put back in the canal. Gator was fine.
Yeah.
3-month look ahead, respond to dry season or wet season, whichever one you want to call what we're in right now. Pump orders, install the new shaft on pump number 2 at Merritt. We have 3 open positions out there we're actively recruiting for, and then continue with the 3 new employees, make sure they're up to date and can run the pump stations for the next wet season. And with that, any questions?
Okay, board questions and comments for Mr. Wolf?
Quickie.
Go ahead.
We own the drone, correct? It's
No,
not,
it's a contractor.
oh, it's contractor.
Yep.
Okay, interesting. And then with the manatee area, you only had to remove the trees on the one side to get the access, right? Or do you have to do both?
Actually, both sides, because we're gonna armor the banks on both sides, so the ponds won't silt in again.
Okay,
right,
So
so
mitigation, okay.
Had to take out everything this time.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I wanted to mention one thing. I'm glad you asked the question about the drone. I had a similar question about the operator and that service. When I was out at the FAC Union pump station on Wednesday with the Corps, I noticed the spreader basin is looking very good, and the work that you did on the vegetation maintenance and the removal there has really shaped that spreader basin up very, very nicely.
Good.
I wanted to give a shout out to you and your guys who did the work, because it wasn't quite completed the last time I was out there, but this time it was. Looks good.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, anything else for Andrew? Any public, well, we don't necessarily need public comment, but if there's any, I'll take it.
We have none, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. Okay, water conditions report with Brad Jackson.
Okay, good morning again. Back with a different topic this time, our water conditions report, and I'll be going through kind of what's been going on in the system, the weather conditions and status of everything since our last board meeting in October. So as usual, I'll start off here. Since this is the first meeting of the year, I'll go through 2023, our calendar year, and what were the main takeaways as far as the rainfall and how do we end up and how do we fare. As everyone probably remembers, the summer was more like our dry season than our wet season, so it's no surprise that 2023 ended up below average. We normally have around 56 inches of rain. We only got about 43 so far, or during the whole year. On the right side, we split it up into different basins. The general consensus, I guess, if looking at that, the more east you were in the basin, you got more rainfall, and the coastal areas really had a deficit. Those were in the 30-inch range, which is almost half of what you would normally get. So it's even less if you were very much on the coast. Quickly run through each month and what's happened since our board meeting. So back up to November. November was the first time in quite some time where we were above normal. So somehow a switch flipped and we went from too dry to not too wet, but more wet than normal. So November got us 4.5 inches of rain or so, which is more than double our average. And it really helped bring water levels up, start to rehydrate some wetlands, so we can hold on to that water and start to make up the deficit that we created over the summer. But 4 inches alone isn't going to do that all in one sitting, but you can look at your basins and it was pretty widespread. Everyone got 4 to 5 inches of rain. So it was a nice, good uniform coverage of rainfall. And at this point in time, we really held on to most of that rainfall and didn't have to make big discharges. Go to the next month, December, not as much as a surplus there, but we did have more rainfall than normal. And this was kind of as advertised, as I think I talked about in an October meeting. We were expecting a wetter than normal dry season, and here we are with that realization. So this is a far cry from what's happened in 1995, no 13 inches of rain, but again, this is all beneficial stuff here. And in January, more of the same, but this one's very close to average in January. The northern part of the system, the kind of Lake Trafford, Corkscrew Swamp, Golden Gate, Main area got more than their southern and eastern areas, but not by a lot. Overall, pretty good coverage. These are all front driven, so as the cold fronts move through, everyone gets a good soaking, which is different than your summertime rainfall, which is very sporadic and random. And then this month so far, this is just through the 19th. We did have a decent little rainstorm on, I believe it was Sunday. But through then, we've got about 2.5 inches of rain, well above our average. And if you look at last year, we had 0.1 inches of rain in February. So we're doing much better than then. And again, I'll talk about how we're holding on to as much water as possible to erase some of the deficit we accumulated. So instead of looking at just 2023 as all in total, I want to look at just the water year. And to remind everyone, this starts May 1st. We flip the clock and reset the gauge at May 1st, and then it ends at the end of April. So overall, the change here, again, wet season was dry season is wet. It's weird and backwards. I'm not, but it's basically a function of the El Nino and the way the weather patterns have been coming across the area. So overall, we got about 6.5 inch deficit for the water year, which isn't too bad considering how we started the dry season. We ended the wet season with 12-inch deficit, and we've cut that in half by now. We still have a couple more months to go, so maybe we'll get to an almost average year. And so far, we've got about 5.5 inch surplus in just the dry season. So we'll continue to operate in a way to hold the water in the system as we can. That's the part I'll go through here next. So to remind everyone on how to read these graphs, there's a lot of lines here, but just very quickly, the blue shaded area, that's kind of our target range of where we like to hold the water level at this particular water control structure. This one here on top is GG4, which is represented over here as the blue triangle. So the blue line is 2023, and then the dashed line is 2024 so far. So generally speaking, the blue line and the dash line here is above this kind of green band, and that green band is kind of your historical average range. It's your 75th percentile to the 25th percentile. So that's where you normally have been in the period of record. So what the takeaway on most of these is that we've been dry and we're operating the system in a way to hold as much as possible. So you can see these lines are bouncing around the very top of the blue range as much as we can with those particular control structures. More of the same, this is Cocohatchee. So again, the graphs are similar, so they're consistent, and you can start to see the trends as you get used to seeing them. But overall, the Cocohatchee, Coco 3 is the top one here, which that's the blue triangle. And you can see this all last summer, we were down here at the very bottom. We weren't moving any water at all. That was just nothing. We weren't able to increase the water level, and the rainfall never came for us to discharge until the very end of the season, and we finally were able to move things up to the top of the range, and here they sit still. You can actually see it's above the historical maximum for Coco 3, which is interesting to show how much higher we're able to hold things, but we're still able to provide that flood control. So there's not a lot of flow going through these structures, which is important to understand that there's just because the water levels may look a little more elevated than you would see in June or July, we still have lots of capacity in the system in the case that we need it to move the water out and provide that flood level of protection to the citizens. Move over to the east. Again, more of the same here. It's a good news story. Everything's up at the top of water level range as much as we can. And Henderson Creek, again, is more of the same. All these items are well above normal for this time of year, which is fantastic. I'll transition here very quickly and talk about picayune strand restoration. It's been another year since I talked about this slide in particular, I believe. And so what I want to kind of go through here is how much rainfall fell over the restored area and how much do we actually pump into that restored area. And those are two different things. So right now we have 2 pump stations online that are pumping for restoration flow. The green shaded area is the current restoration area. It's restored today in some form or fashion, and the orange line, that's the full project boundary. So once Miller Pump Station's online, Southwest Protection Features done, all the other things come online and are done, we can start to fill in the rest of these with the shaded area and tell a little bit different story. But generally speaking, this area got near average rainfall for the year. So overall, about 132,000 acre feet fell just in the green square, just from rainfall. And then if you compare that with what we pumped, is about 50,000 acre feet. And that's about 18 inches of depth that we pumped over that entire area. If you averaged it all up and added it all up all at once, it'd be about 18 inches over that area that we put back into the environment. that didn't used to be there. It used to just go through the canals and out. So that's a good story here. And you can kind of see the same graphs on the right, just to kind of give us an indication of where the water levels are in terms of where they were historically and how much we've pumped. So to explain the bottom graph a little bit on these two, the bottom here is how much water we actually pump through the pump stations. So you can see in the summer months, we pumped barely anything at the Fac Union Canal. I mean, this is 50 CFS or something. And even as we ended the year, we still didn't pump that much. But really this year, for us to be pumping this amount of water in February and January is definitely, we have not done it at this structure before since this one's so new. So where water levels are above normal due to the above normal rainfall, and we're trying to bring the water levels down to kind of meet the bottom of this range by the time we get to the start of wet season. So we have a good starting spot. So we're actually pumping to help, one, for the environment, but also to help the recession that you would normally see in the dry season. And then the Merritt Pump Station, the similar story here. This one pumps more than Vaca Union Pump Station. The natural area that's upstream of 488 or Merritt, once it fills up and gives, it never stops giving water. So we definitely pump more here than we do at Vaca Union. And so you can see how much we've actually pumped over the years, over this year. So if you compare this with Vaca Union, you never got up to 200, 250 CFS at Vaca Union. Here, we did that consistently for almost a month, and then again in November. And even now, we're having to increase the pumping out there just to keep the water levels on their normal recession that you should see this time of year. But if we didn't pump at all, it would just be stacked up too high in the upstream side. But now all that water gets to go to the environment, sheet flow and restoration. It's great to see. So I spent on my capital slide updates and everything, I talked about how much more water we can hold in the system. And in essence, that's what this slide shows. For this time of year, each canal section, each monitoring station has some period of record that we have data for. But if you look at just the snapshot of the 19th, every canal section, with the exception of one, is above the 90th percentile for this time of year. So normally you would see those in the green and your water levels would be feet lower. But with the control structures we've got, we're able to hold those up more. It's still within our operational range. So nothing, this isn't a bad story. It's a good story showing that the water levels are higher, and that's the fresh water that we're holding. It's not going out to Naples Bay. It's there for water supply and, groundwater recharge and wetlands. So it's a fantastic thing to see that actually take place as we start to operate the structures differently. So if you remember a year ago, we had a ribbon cutting at our Cork 2 structure. That was a structure that's, again, at the very top of our system. It's one of the interfaces between the Corkscrew Swamp and our canal system. So this was an important one for us to get the remote connectivity to, the remote control on. And I kind of wanted, since it's been a year now, just to really quickly highlight how the operations have changed since this time last year. And so to orient everyone, focus on the left side of the screen here. The yellow kind of odd shape is kind of the overall watershed for Crew. And then the arrows, those are the kind of general flow paths. And you see the multiple outlets, our corkscrew structures, Coco 3 and the keel. Those are our major canal structures that remove the water from it. There's other smaller ones, but those are the big ones. And today we're going to focus on Cork 2 right here in the middle. So to zoom in to that section in particular, the Cork 2 structure is right here. And I've got a lot of data over here on the right. So let me walk through that here real quickly. The orange line here, I've labeled that the road elevation. That corresponds to all these different roads over here. And that's approximately the road elevation. It's not a perfectly flat, obviously, but that's an average of what we would expect the road elevations to be throughout the region. So we don't want the water levels to go above that, because then you've got water levels above the road, which is not ideal. We're not providing our flood control and everything, so we don't want to operate in that range. The green line here, you kind of see this green odd shape over here that I'm highlighting, and That's kind of one of the natural slough wetland areas in the area. And if you looked at the elevation of that particular region, it hits about this green line. So, you know, it's below the road elevation, which makes sense. But if we want the wetlands to be hydrated, we need our canal levels to be above that, so the wetlands are not draining into the canal too quickly. So the way that I would kind of look at this, as we had our ribbon cutting last year, our blue line here at the February was all the way here above the wetland grade, and then the rain just turned off and stayed off until all the way in September. So this whole this whole past wet season, we didn't operate that structure at all, and it remained shut. Even with that, the water levels were still down here in their lower range. At the very bottom of the operational range, this blue band, and it's even below the green band. So, you know, there's still a natural use of water that's above and beyond what goes through the structures. So, but once the water started coming, the rains, our dry season rains started coming, the water levels increased quickly. And so it jumped up almost 3 feet in just a month in this small section. And since then, you can see the blue line is sitting at the very top of that range. And then the purple line, which is this year, is at the very top. So we're even able to hold it higher than we have historically, and very limited discharges. The flows that come through the system, I mean, if you compared to what you just saw on the Picayune Strand project, these are 10, 20, 30 CFS. So very small flow rates, and the volume here would just fill up several hundred Olympic-sized bathtubs or pools. It's not as much water at all that goes through the system. So it really shows how this new control structure lets us refine that water level upstream. So I just wanted to highlight what's happened since we did the ribbon cutting, and some results of that new structure that was brought online, and some real benefit that we've seen this year. So to kind of go with that, I think I showed something similar to this last time, but this one is a snapshot, and there's a loop here on the left of the water depth and the water contours over the past year. So in essence, the dark reds over here, that means the water level is well below ground. If you see the greens and the blues, the water levels are above ground. And this is focused on our Picayune Strand, Bellmead, and Fakahatchee areas, along with the Crew or Corkscrew, you know, kind of watershed. So what's interesting to see here is if you look at the dates, as this creeps through summer, these water levels never come up, which makes sense, is what I just described at the Cork 2 structure. But then as this starts to get into October and then through current, watch as the levels become more saturated, and you get greens and blues and everything in this area. So right now, that swamp is probably more in line with what you would see in a typical August than what you would see in a typical February. So that's just an interesting feature, I guess, of the El Nino events that we've been having, but it is in stark contrast to what we saw last year and this summer. And I thought this was an interesting way to visualize that for the board and the public. And this gets updated automatically for us. We kind of use this as a tool to kind of assess how wet, how saturated the lands are upstream. It helps us inform what we're going to do with the control structure if we do get a big rain event. If the water levels are well below ground, we know we have a lot more breathing room ahead of a storm. If it's not, then we know the system's going to react a lot faster, and we might make some different decisions on how we operate things. Normally in February, I spend at least a decent amount of time talking about groundwater trends, but we're so wet right now and above normal. Overall, the story is, if you looked at this in October, the chart on the right, most of these were in the reds and oranges, which means they were in the lower percentiles. With all the abundance of rainfall we've had, everything's recovered nicely, and groundwater in short looks good for this time of year. Well above normal pretty much throughout the system, as you would expect. And I'll close here with a long-term outlook in the foreseeable future. And through March, April, May, we have an above average chance of rainfall still, of more than average. As we move into wet season, it's less clear. I mean, those are so far out anyways, but right now there's not one signal one way or the other, whether it'll be a wet summer or a dry summer. We don't know yet. But I do know after today, at least for the next week, it should be dry and sunny, and we should have some good weather. So And I'll close there. And if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Brad. Excellent report. Questions for Brad? Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
I'll lead off, Brad. On your chart on page 16, which was kind of cool, map, of the water depths. But it seems like it's cut off on the boundaries, I guess, of your area, such as 41, and to the east on 29. Is it possible to have that same analysis that would include those areas to see if there's water flow being backed up by the road structures?
So on 29, the district already has a similar tool that looks at Big Cypress Preserve and
Okay.
Everglades and everything. So you can get a similar map that's published on the website for those areas. As far as what's below here,
Yes.
it is something we could look at. We looked at 41 as kind of being the dividing line. Since that area is tidal, it might not represent 100% correctly, but we can look at it and see what happens.
And as I commented earlier in the board comments, is my concern is that water's backing up with around 41 due to 41. Where do you think the water flows out of the Picayune Strand of the restoration areas? Do you have any feel for how that's as it moves towards the estuary as to where it's going? Do we have any data on that?
So we do. I don't have it here. But
Okay.
there are several culverts that were put in underneath 41. There's still new culverts that were built as part of the Southwest Protection Feature. So as that restoration water gets spread out over the north side of 41, there are additional culverts and conveyance systems that were put in under 41 to move that water out so it doesn't stack up like you're saying.
Okay.
So, and those were done, I think, pre-plugging
Yes.
of Prairie Canal. And then the latest ones are right there by Tomato Road in the Southwest Protection Feature, which are built but not open and conveying water yet.
Yeah, and I believe that project is just completed, at least as far as the visual work.
Yes, the conveyance features are done, but they're not moving water yet because the Miller pump station's not online, so there's stop logs in there currently.
Okay. So, okay, good. All right. Thank you. There's something we can talk about later as to where it's all going.
Sure, yeah.
Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Are you just memorizing this and you read this all off, or you just, it's unbelievable. It's just like your report. Okay, I actually have a question, but I just wanted to give you kudos. So a lot of information, this is a learning curve question, so take it with a grain of salt. Do you report back on water quality? And at what point and who does it? Is it in your purview? I would guess so. But in general.
So the water quality monitoring is in essence completed by Collier County has their water quality monitoring network, and they have the contract and staff that go out and hit a lot of the different sites to then measure that. All that data is uploaded to the internet, and I cannot remember the name of the website off the top of my head, but the Collier County is basically the main one that does that. As far as like Picayune Strand restoration, there are water quality monitoring sites that are part of the permit conditions and requirements when that system was built. And those are completed by the Corps and or the district and is uploaded and is available. So if there's a specific spot that you're looking for in Picayune Strand, that data is available. If it's the rest of the area, it's really a Collier County function that monitors the water quality.
So I'm thinking of integration. So when I'm looking at this, I'd want to see that too. So I need to pull up theirs, or is their data? And obviously you look at their data.
So the water quality is an important piece of it, but we don't necessarily make flood control decisions based on the water quality that's there. The flood control and how to move the water, it has to happen because of what's happening upstream.
Understood.
So, yeah.
Understood. You're flood. Okay. All right. So that kind of puts it full circle for me. Thank you.
And I was going to mention, PJ, we normally have Collier County Pollution Control come and present to this board on what they're seeing and some of their results. So we usually have them come before this board. It might be the next meeting that we're working on it, Lisa.
Sorry. There have been some years they've come in April. I think last year they came more in, I think in July, August timeframe. But we can certainly reach out to their staff and see if they
Get a
can.
full briefing.
Just good to know. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, whatever's convenient for them, but we normally get at least one presentation a year from them to help us understand that picture that you're asking about.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, anybody else have anything? Great report, Brad. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now we're at the monthly financial report and preliminary budget discussion with Candida Heater.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. The monthly financial report that's in your package, you have two. You have one for the month of November and then one for the month of December. I'll go over the month of December. So the month of December is 25% of the fiscal year being completed. You have thus far collected 85% of your recurring revenues. You are on trend. There are no anomalies or issues that I need to bring to your attention. You have collected $11.1 million of your $13 million tax revenue, which is about 85.4%. That is on trend as you were at this time last year. Moving on to the expenditures and obligations, you're 38% obligated. What that means is you have either expended or have under an active contract on a purchase order, funds set aside out of your financials. So you have $6.7 million encumbered, which means on a purchase order for a contract. And $1.4 million of expenses through the month of December. So the basin is doing very, very well. So moving on to the next topic, what I would like to do is just go over what the next steps are that you can expect for your budget development process and from your staff. So this is pertaining to your fiscal year 24-25 budget, which begins October 1 of 2024 and ends September 30th of 2025. So where we are right now, the milestones that are important are will happen in the month of March, which is just around the corner. We have our legislative session, which will be coming to an end. And at that point in time, per statute, the legislative comments are due as well on the district's overall preliminary budget. As you know, the district submitted a preliminary budget that was due statutorily January 15th. The district submitted that budget January 12th. And if we receive comments March 1st, then the district must respond by March 15th. April, so what your staff will be doing between March and the April timeframe is working with your basin administrator and staff that support the basin's work plans and determining if there need to be any changes and tweaks to the preliminary budget that was submitted for you to the legislature in January. You move from the preliminary budget then into what we call the tentative budget, which is gearing up for the month of July. And as you see here on July, one of the major dates is July 1st. July 1st is a statutory deadline as to when taxable values are due from the county property appraisers. If there is an extension requested and DOR grants that property or that county then is granted 10 extra days. We typically have not seen that with Collier County, which has never really caused us or posed us an issue to be able to come before you and meet the deadline. The July 8th is when the Big Cypress Basin Board is held, and we will bring to you the tentative millage rate and budget. At that meeting, we will request your approval of the millage rate and the budget, the tentative millage rate and budget. That will then in return then be a part of the July 11th meeting at the district governing board where the same actions do take place at the district governing board level on all the millage rates in the budget. August 1st is the next statutory deadline that we are to submit a tentative budget to the governor's office and the legislature. So that budget that you approve at your July meeting and that the district then, approves the millage rate and approves at the July meeting, we then submit as a part of the submittal August 1. August 4th is when we are to submit the certification of the proposed millage rates to the county property appraisers. Then August 23rd, we come back before you, and that is where we request approval of your final millage rate and budget. That is then a part of the submittal that goes to the district governing board September 12th in that business meeting at 5:15. Where we request approval of the tentative millage rates and budget. September 17th, which is 5 business days, that's another statutory deadline, that if the governor or legislature has any comments on your tentative budget, those are due 5 business days prior to your final budget hearing. Final budget hearing being September 24th at the district, which is where the district approves the final millage rates and budget. So the next steps pertaining to working on the Basin Board budget, as I'd mentioned earlier, we will continue to refine revenues and expenditures based on presentations like you received today from Brad on the capital program, as well as discussions that Lisa and your budget staff will have with the departments, and we will then report back to the Basin Board on those tentative budget updates, receive direction, feedback, and potential changes that we do know that we will be making in the 24-25 budget is the capital program, the Gordon and Palm River structure replacement. We have a cash flow that Brad has presented to you today, and we will mimic that unless there are some changes that is brought before you. Staffing allocations, which is where we allocate those staff members who support Basin work plan activities. And then any revenue updates that we have, as mentioned earlier, the taxable values coming in for your ad valorem, investment earnings, audited balances, etc. And that concludes my my report to you.
Thank you, Ms. Heater. Are there any questions for budget or for the monthly report? Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Okay, that brings us to, was there any public comment, Troy, on that item? Okay, that brings us to general public comment, the second session, another chance for the public to comment on anything that was not on the agenda. Is there any public comment?
There is not.
Okay, that brings us the final board comment. We'll go ahead and just go down the line. Ms. Smith?
I don't really have anything except for I will be meeting with Lisa and Andrew on my other world, one of my other worlds, as the president of Naples Area Board of Realtors, to see if we can work together to do a canal cleanup project sometime in the month of July. So hopefully we can work together on that. I'm very excited. So other than that, I'm good.
That sounds great. Mr. Hill?
I'm concerned about the Ford Lightning's towing capacity, so I volunteer to borrow the truck when it arrives to for a weekend to see if it will tow my boat effectively.
Good try, Andy. Good try. Good try. Ms. McLeod? Vice Chair Waters? I have one thing, and it has to do, PJ, with you attending the Resiliency Conference. I'm still trying to deconflict my calendar. I'm not sure if I'll be able to attend at least one of the days. But Dr. Carolina Moran, our District Resiliency Officer, will be there. And I want to make sure I'll talk to her and let her know that you will be attending. I just want to make sure you know who she is and you get a chance to meet while you're there.
Madam Chair, did she present at the October meeting? No? Okay. I thought she was here. January.
She was at the EVCO meeting.
EVCO meeting.
Good, that wouldn't be me. Okay, I'm dreaming. All right,
Okay.
that would be great if you could put us together.
Yes, and you can come back. That's great that you'll come back and give a report. And like I said, I'm at least trying to attend one day of that conference, but that was great information that you shared. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our meeting. I want to thank everyone for participating and everyone who prepared such excellent presentations for the board today, and also for the board for great participation for our board meeting this month. So I want to thank you. Our next Basin Board meeting is scheduled for April 26th, right here at the same place at the same time. And with that, we're adjourned.